Imagine this. It's a sunny weekend. The smell of smoky barbecue drifting through the air, laughter around the tables, and suddenly, the police show up at my restaurant. That's right, cops at my door. All because the HOA decided my BBQ business was too much for the neighborhood. I thought I was living the American dream, running a small, family-friendly restaurant, serving people good food and building a community, but apparently that wasn't allowed. From the very start, it felt personal. The HOA wasn't just enforcing rules, they were targeting me, threatening fines, letters, and eventually showing up at my door with authority figures. I had poured my heart into this place, and to have it jeopardized over something that seemed so trivial felt like a nightmare. Every interaction with them felt like walking on eggshells, and every letter made me question how a simple BBQ restaurant could turn into such a battleground. I'm sure you're wondering, what could I possibly do against a whole HOA? Well, I fought back, but not just quietly. There's more to this story than just legal threats and tension-filled meetings. It's about standing up for yourself when the odds seem stacked against you, about uncovering the hidden power dynamics of neighborhood politics, and yes, about what happens when ordinary people refuse to back down. By the end of this video, you'll see how a simple business dispute escalated into a full-on legal showdown, and how the situation took a shocking turn that nobody expected. But first, let me take you back to the day everything went wrong, the day the cops arrived. The day I realized this HOA would stop at nothing. You're going to want to stick around. Because this isn't just a story about barbecue. It's about courage, conflict, and what happens when you refuse to let someone bully you out of your dream. Do you want me to also draft the next part of the story script that builds on this cliffhanger? Before that fateful day, I thought running a small restaurant in a tight-knit neighborhood would be smooth sailing. I had spent months perfecting my recipes, designing a cozy patio, and trying to create a place where families could come together over good food. Customers loved it, neighbors waved as they walked by, and everything seemed normal until the HOA started sending their friendly reminders. At first, it was small stuffed complaints about noise, the smell of smoke drifting a little too far, minor parking issues. I tried to address everything politely, thinking we could work things out like civilized neighbors. But then the letters escalated. The tone changed from polite reminders to threats, warnings about fines, and legal consequences if I didn't comply. I started feeling trapped in my own business. Every time I opened the door, I expected the HOA to be there with another complaint or a new rule that seemed completely arbitrary. I began questioning if I was overreacting, but deep down, I knew this wasn't normal. It was personal. The tension in the neighborhood was growing too. Some neighbors whispered that I was being unreasonable. Others quietly supported me. The sense of community I had worked so hard to build was starting to fracture. I remember nights lying awake, thinking about the next letter, the next call, the next confrontation, and wondering how far would they go. Would they really try to shut me down completely? Then came the day the cops showed up. That moment changed everything. It wasn't just about barbecue anymore. It was about standing up to an organization that seemed untouchable, about proving that one person's dream wasn't theirs to crush. And while I thought I was ready to fight, I had no idea how deep this conflict would go, or the shocking consequences that would follow. What happened next pushed me into uncharted territory, testing my limits in ways I never imagined. Do you want me to continue with the part where the confrontation escalates and legal action begins? When the cops finally arrived at my restaurant, I felt a mix of anger, disbelief, and fear. I had invited people to enjoy a meal, not to be confronted like a criminal. They weren't there for a crime, they were acting on the HOA's complaints. The officers looked official, but I could see the hesitation in their eyes, as if they knew this wasn't really a law enforcement issue. Still, the threat was real. I was told I could be cited, fined, or even shut down if I didn't comply immediately. That's when I realized this was bigger than just barbecue, was a battle over control, over who gets to dictate what happens in a neighborhood. And suddenly, I was in the crosshairs. Behind the scenes, the HOA meetings were even more intense. I discovered there were neighbors quietly siding with them, giving them power I hadn't anticipated. Rumors spread that my restaurant was disruptive, and even some of my regular customers began hesitating to visit, afraid of being caught in the middle. It was frustrating because I wasn't doing anything illegal. I was running a legitimate small business, but the intimidation tactics worked. The HOA had created an environment where I felt constantly watched, second-guessing every decision. At the same time, I had supporters who refused to stay silent. A few neighbors and friends began attending meetings, questioning the HOA's motives and demanding fairness. Their presence gave me hope, but it also made the HOA more aggressive. Letters turned into threats of lawsuits, fines escalated, and suddenly the idea of taking legal action became a necessity rather than an option. I had to protect not just my restaurant, but my livelihood and my reputation. Every day became a tightrope walk. One misstep could cost me everything. And just when I thought I was preparing for the worst, something happened behind closed doors that would turn this conflict into a full-blown legal showdown. Do you want me to write the next part where the legal battle starts and tensions peak? By the time I decided to take legal action, things had spiraled far beyond what I could have imagined. Every visit to the restaurant felt like walking into a battlefield. The tension was palpable. Neighbors would glare as they passed. The HOA sent letters almost daily, and the fear of sudden inspections or citations hung over me like a dark cloud. I started documenting everything: photos, videos, emails, conversations. I knew I needed proof, something solid that would show the harassment wasn't just a misunderstanding. Hiring a lawyer was intimidating. I had never imagined I'd be going up against an organization like this, but once we started digging into their actions, a pattern of overreach and intimidation became clear. It wasn't just about rules anymore. It was about power and control. And suddenly, I realized I wasn't the only one affected. Other small businesses in the area had quietly dealt with similar pressures. And it became apparent that standing up wasn't just about MIT, was about challenging a system that had gone too far. Meanwhile, the HOA wasn't backing down. They escalated their tactics, sending more threatening letters, hinting at fines I couldn't afford, and even contacting some of my suppliers, trying to create pressure from every angle. Each new attempt to intimidate me only strengthened my resolve. But the stress was intense. I felt like I was constantly on edge, never knowing when the next move would come or how severe it would be. As the court date approached, the tension hit a fever pitch. Friends warned me to be cautious. Neighbors whispered theories about what the HOA might do next, and I kept replaying every confrontation in my mind. Then, just days before the hearing, something happened that shocked me completely, something that threatened to change the entire trajectory of the case and put everything I had built on the line. The next moments would test me in ways I never expected, and the outcome seemed more uncertain than ever. Do you want me to draft the climactic confrontation scene next? Just when I thought I had prepared for every possible scenario, the unexpected happened. A week before the court hearing, I received a call from one of my suppliers. They sounded nervous, almost apologetic. Kay told me that the HOA had contacted them directly, questioning whether they should continue. I knew that the next move could change everything. Do you want me to continue with the courtroom showdown and peak tension scene? The courtroom was packed, the air thick with tension. I could feel my heart racing as the judge called the case to order. For months, I had prepared, gathering evidence, documenting every interaction with the HOA, every threat, every attempt to intimidate my business. And now, It all came down to this moment. The HOA representatives sat across from me, confident and smug, as if they already believed the outcome was theirs. But I had spent countless sleepless nights making sure they were wrong. When my lawyer presented the evidence, the letters, the recorded threats, the documentation of their attempts to interfere with my suppliers, the room went quiet. It was clear even to them that this wasn't just a neighborhood dispute. This was harassment. Witnesses, including neighbors who had supported me, stepped up to testify, adding weight to my side of the story. Slowly, the tide began to turn. The judges. Questions were pointed, highlighting the overreach and intimidation tactics the HOA had used. I felt a mixture of relief and disbelief as the narrative I had lived through started to make sense in the courtroom. Then came the twist I didn't see coming. Just as the judge prepared to deliver the ruling, a former HOA board member entered, with a stack of documents that exposed internal emails showing the HOA's personal vendetta against me. They admitted to exaggerating complaints and even coaching other neighbors to support their claims. The evidence was undeniable. The judge didn't just rule in my favor. He reprimanded the HOA, invalidated their threats, and set strict limits on their future actions. I walked out of the courtroom feeling a mix of exhaustion and vindication. My restaurant was safe, my reputation intact, and my community slowly rallied back around me. But just as I was beginning to breathe, I got a cryptic message on social media. You may have won this battle, but the war isn't over. The fight I thought was finished suddenly felt far from over. After the courtroom victory, life slowly began to return to normal, though I knew things would never be exactly the same. My restaurant reopened fully, and this time customers came back in greater numbers than before. Some even bringing friends and family who had heard about the battle I'd fought. The support from the community reminded me why I had started this business in the first place, to bring people together over good food and shared experiences. Every plate of barbecue served felt like a small victory, a reminder that standing up for what's right can make a difference. The HOA, now under strict restrictions, could no longer interfere with my business. Some board members quietly resigned, and the community began to heal. Even neighbors who had been skeptical reached out, apologizing for letting themselves be swept up in the conflict. I realized that fear and misunderstanding had fueled much of the tension and communication. Open conversation was the key to rebuilding trust. The legal battle had taught me lessons I never expected. I learned the importance of documenting every step, of knowing my rights, and of not letting intimidation control my decisions. More than that, I discovered the power of resilience and community support.